The old ship floated in the darkness of space like a ghost. It had been drifting for hundreds of years, far away from any star or planet. No one had touched it. No one had found it. Until now. Commander Thyrus stood on the bridge of her research vessel, the Seeker of Knowledge, and stared at the image on the main screen. The ancient ship was small, barely bigger than a shuttle. Its metal was dark and worn from centuries of floating through the void. But what caught her attention were the markings on its hull. Warning symbols, dozens of them, written in 47 different galactic languages. "What does it say?" Thyrus asked. Science Officer Rin stepped forward. His gray skin looked pale in the blue light of the screens. "The same thing in every language. Commander, do not open. Do not wake. Leave this vessel undisturbed." Thyrus felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed the feeling away. She had not become a commander by running from mysteries. "Do we know where it came from?" Rin worked at his station for a moment. "The design matches ships from the extinction era. Approximately 800 years old." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the extinction era. It was the time when humans had disappeared from the galaxy. One day, they were everywhere. Building, fighting, trading. The next day they were gone. No one knew why. No one knew where they went. They simply vanished, leaving behind empty worlds and abandoned stations. "Humans," Lieutenant Kavros said from his security station. His voice was thick with disbelief. "You think this ship belonged to humans?" "The evidence suggests it," Rin said carefully. "But Commander, I must advise caution. The warnings on this vessel are very clear." Thyrus turned to look at him. "You believe in old stories, Rin? Humans were just another species. They lived. They died. They disappeared. There is nothing special about them. With respect, Commander, that is not what the historical records say." Rin pulled up data on his screen. Before their disappearance, humans were considered the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. They fought wars against enemies 10 times their size and won. They built weapons that could destroy planets. Other species made treaties with them not out of friendship, but out of fear. "Stories," Thyrus said. "Legends told to frighten children. Bring the ship aboard. I want to see what is inside." Kavros looked worried. "Commander, should we not report this to headquarters first, and let someone else claim the discovery?" "No." Thyrus sat down in her command chair. "This could be the find of the century. A real human artifact. Perfectly preserved. Bring it in." The crew worked quickly. Within an hour, the ancient ship was resting in the cargo bay of the Seeker of Knowledge. Thyrus led a team down to examine it, with Rin and Kavros close behind her. Up close, the warnings looked even more serious. Someone had carved them deep into the metal, making sure they would last forever. Thyrus ran her fingers over the strange human letters, feeling the grooves beneath her touch. "Open it," she ordered. The engineers cut through the airlock with care. The seal broke with a hiss of old air, and the door swung open. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered on as they stepped through, casting red shadows on the walls. The ship was mostly empty. A small cockpit. A storage area with dried food packets that had turned to dust long ago. A tiny sleeping space with a bed that had never been used. And in the center of it all, a cryopod. Thyrus stopped breathing for a moment. The pod was still running. After 800 years, the power cells were still working, keeping whatever was inside, frozen and alive. "Commander," Rin whispered. "There is something in there." They gathered around the pod and wiped away the frost on the viewing window. Inside, they saw a face. A human face. Male, with short brown hair and strong features. His eyes were closed, and his chest was still. But the monitors on the pod showed a heartbeat. Slow and steady. "It is alive," Kavros said. "A living human." Thyrus could not believe what she was seeing. "This is impossible. Cryo technology cannot last this long. Nothing can." "Human technology was different," Rin said quietly. "They built things to last. They built things to survive." Thyrus studied the pod. There were more warnings on it. written in human language. She did not need a translation to understand what they meant. Danger. Do not open. Last resort. Wake it up, she said. Rin grabbed her arm. Commander, please. We do not know why this human was frozen. We do not know why there are so many warnings. Something about this is wrong. We are scientists, Rin. We study things. We learn. Thyris pulled her arm free. This human has been asleep for 800 years. Whatever danger it posed is ancient history. Wake it up. Kavros stepped forward reluctantly. His fingers moved over the pod controls, starting the revival process. Warm air began to flow into the chamber. The ice on the viewing window started to melt. The human's fingers twitched. It is working, Kavros reported. Life signs are increasing, heart rate climbing, brain activity starting. Rin backed away from the pod. Commander, I need to tell you something. In the old records, there were different types of humans. Workers, builders, traders. But there was another type, soldiers. They were trained from birth to fight. They were given special treatments to make them faster, stronger, harder to kill. The other species called them something in their own language. What did they call them? Thyris asked. Before Rin could answer, the pod made a loud clicking sound. The lid began to open, steam pouring out into the cold air. The human's eyes snapped open. They were blue, like deep ice. And they were not confused. They were not scared. They moved from face to face, studying each person in the room, measuring them, judging them. The human sat up slowly. His movements were careful and controlled. Like a predator waking from sleep, he looked at the aliens surrounding him, at the unfamiliar walls of the ship, at the pod that had been his home for 8 centuries. Then he spoke. His voice was rough from centuries of silence, but his words were clear. Where am I? And who are you? Thyris tried to answer, but no sound came out. She had wanted to find something amazing, something that would make her famous. But looking into those cold blue eyes, she began to understand why humans had put so many warnings on this ship. They had not been trying to keep people out. They had been trying to keep something in, and she had just let it out. The human moved before anyone could react. One moment he was sitting in the cryopod, weak and stiff from 800 years of frozen sleep. The next moment he was standing, his hand wrapped around the weapon that Kavros had been reaching for. Kavros had not even touched his gun yet. The human had seen the movement, understood the threat, and acted. All in the time it took Thyris to blink. Nobody move, the human said. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. Like a river that looked peaceful on top, but had deadly currents below. Dr. Mira Orvax, the ship's medical officer, stepped forward slowly. She held up her hands to show she was not armed. Please, we mean you no harm. I am a doctor. You have been frozen for a very long time. Your body needs care. The human's eyes studied her. They moved over her face, her hands, her body. He was looking for threats, Thyris realized. Looking for hidden weapons, dangerous movements. His mind was working faster than she could follow. What species are you? He asked. We are Velkari, Thyris answered. I am Commander Thyris of the research vessel Seeker of Knowledge. We found your ship drifting in space and brought it aboard. The warnings did not stop you? Thyris felt heat rise to her face. We are scientists. We wanted to understand. The human made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Scientists. Right. He looked down at the weapon in his hand, then slowly placed it on the ground. I am not going to hurt you, but I need answers. Dr. Mira moved closer, pulling out her medical scanner. May I? Your body has been through serious stress. I need to make sure you are healthy. The human nodded once. As Mira ran her scanner over him, Rin stepped forward carefully. What is your name? Rin asked. Jake. Jake Brennan. Sergeant, 7th Orbital Drop Battalion, United Earth Defense Force. The words came out automatically. like he had said them 1,000 times before. Sergeant Brennan, I am Science Officer Rin. I study history. I have many questions, if you are willing to answer them. Jake looked at him with those cold blue eyes. Ask your questions, then answer mine. Rin nodded. What year was it when you entered cryo sleep? 3047, Earth calendar. Rin checked his datapad. That was 800 years ago by Galactic Standard Time. Jake's face did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. A flash of pain that came and went so fast Thyrus almost missed it. 800 years? And Earth? What happened to Earth? The room went silent. Rin looked at Thyrus, then back at Jake. We do not know. 800 years ago, humans disappeared from the galaxy. All of them. Your ships, your colonies, your home world, everything went dark. No one knows why. Jake was quiet for a long moment. His hands, which had been so steady when he took Kavros's weapon, began to shake slightly. Everyone is dead. My family, my friends, my entire species. We do not know that for certain, Mira said gently. Humans might have gone somewhere else. They might have hidden themselves. No. Jake shook his head. If humans were still alive, they would not hide. That is not who we are. He looked down at his hands, at the metal tag hanging around his neck. Project Last Light. That is why I am here. What is Project Last Light? Thyrus asked. Jake sat down heavily on the edge of the cryopod. The strength seemed to drain out of him as the truth of his situation hit him. We knew the end was coming. The war with the Hive Collective was going badly. Our enemies were too many, too strong. The generals said we had maybe 5 years before Earth fell. The Hive Collective? Rin said. I have never heard of them. Then maybe we won after all, Jake said. But his voice held no hope. Or maybe they are gone too. It does not matter now. He looked up, at the Velkari gathered around him. Project Last Light was our backup plan, our last hope. We took volunteers, soldiers and scientists and doctors, and put them in cryopods. Scattered them across the galaxy on ships like mine. If humanity fell, there would still be seeds left, seeds that might grow into something new. Why were there so many warnings on your pod? Kavros asked. What were they warning about? Oh. Jake reached for his metal tag and held it up. There were words stamped into it, along with numbers and symbols. Different pods held different people. Some held doctors who could heal. Some held teachers who could educate. Some held engineers who could build. And yours? Thyrus asked, though she already knew the answer. Mine held soldiers, warriors, people trained to fight and kill. Jake let the tag fall back against his chest. The warnings were not to protect me. They were to protect everyone else. We were only supposed to be woken if there was no other choice. If peaceful options had failed, if violence was the only answer. The room was quiet. Thyrus thought about how fast Jake had moved, how easily he had taken the weapon from Kavros. And that was when he was weak, from centuries of sleep. What could he do when he was fully recovered? Why would you do this? Mira asked softly. Why volunteer to be frozen? Knowing you might never wake up? Knowing everyone you loved would be dead when you did? Jake looked at her. For a moment, his hard expression softened. Because someone had to. Because if we were going to die, we wanted to make sure something survived. Something that could help whoever came after us. Rin was studying his datapad with a worried expression. Sergeant Brennan, I need to ask you something important. Your cryopod sent out a signal when it began the revival process. An old signal, on frequencies that have not been used for centuries. Jake's face went hard again. What kind of signal? A beacon. Letting anyone listening know that a human was waking up. Jake stood up quickly. How long have we been talking? How far could that signal have traveled? Thyrus felt cold fear spread through her chest. Far enough. If anyone was listening. Thyrus, get me to your bridge, Jake said. Now. If the wrong people heard that signal, they will be coming. And they will not be friendly. Kavros stepped in his way. How do we know we can trust you? You are a stranger. A dangerous stranger. By your own admission. Jake met his eyes. You are right. You do not know if you can trust me. But I know something about this galaxy that you do not. When humans disappeared, we did not take our enemies with us. There are species out there that would kill every person on this ship just to get their hands on a living human. So you can stand here and argue with me, or you can let me help you survive what is coming. He pushed past Kavros and headed for the door. After a moment of hesitation, Thyrus followed him. Whatever Jake Brennan was, whatever he had been trained to do, she had a feeling they were going to need him very soon. Behind them, the cryopod sat empty and silent. Its purpose was complete. The seed had been planted. Now it was time to see what would grow. The bridge of the Seeker of Knowledge was full of panic when Jake arrived. Alarms were flashing red. Crew members were running between stations, shouting numbers and coordinates. On the main screen, Jake could see ships. Many ships. They were coming out of hyperspace like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Report, Thyrus commanded as she took her seat. 7 vessels, Commander. A young officer called out. Krethvar design. Slaver configuration. Jake studied the ships on screen. They were ugly things. All sharp angles and dark metal. Built for war, not exploration. Each one was bigger than the Velkari research vessel. Together, they could destroy the Seeker of Knowledge without breaking a sweat. Slavers, Jake said quietly. Your galaxy still has slavers? Rin appeared beside him. The Krethvar are one of the most dangerous species in known space. They capture people from other races and sell them. Scientists, workers, soldiers, anyone with value. And a living human would have a lot of value, Jake finished. More than you can imagine. Some collectors would pay enough to buy entire planets for a chance to own a real human. The main screen flickered, and a new face appeared. It was a Krethvar, with dark red skin and 4 yellow eyes. Scars covered his face like a map of violence. When he smiled, his teeth were sharp and black. Velkari vessel, the Krethvar said. Thyrus stood up straight, trying to look brave. This is a research vessel under the protection of the Velkari Science Council. We have nothing that belongs to you. Draven laughed. It was not a nice sound. The cryopod you brought aboard sent a signal across half the galaxy. A human signal. Do you know how long I have been waiting for something like this? He leaned closer to the screen. I have been hunting for human artifacts my whole life. Now I find a living human. The only living human in the galaxy. Give it to me, and I will let your crew live. The human is not cargo to be traded, Thyrus said firmly. Everything is cargo, Draven replied. Everything has a price. The question is whether you want to pay it with goods or with blood. Jake had been standing back, watching the exchange. Now he stepped forward into view of the screen. The change in Draven's expression was instant. His 4 eyes went wide, and his smile grew even larger. There it is, Draven breathed. A real human. Living and breathing. Do you know what I could sell you for? Creature. Kings would empty their vaults. Emperors would trade their thrones. Jake's face showed nothing. Are there children on this ship? He asked Thyrus, without looking away from the screen. The question seemed strange, but Thyrus answered. Yes, 12. Some of our researchers brought their families. Something changed in Jake's eyes. They had been cold before, like ice. Now they were hard, like steel. I see, he said quietly. Draven noticed the change too. What is this? Does the human think it can fight? 1 creature against 7 warships? Your species is supposed to be clever. This would be stupid. Let me tell you something, Warlord. Jake's voice was calm and steady. 800 years ago, I was frozen in a pod and shot into space. My people were dying. My world was burning. I went to sleep thinking I would never wake up. That everything I loved was gone forever. And you know what? I was right. Everything is gone. My family, my friends, my entire species. I have nothing left. He took a step closer to the screen. Nothing except the training that was burned into my bones. Nothing except the skills that made my enemies afraid to sleep at night. Your ships are big and your weapons are scary. But you made one mistake, warlord. You threatened children. And where I come from, that is a death sentence. Draven's smile faded slightly. He turned to someone off-screen and spoke in a language Jake did not understand. When he turned back, his confidence had returned. My advisors tell me that humans used to be dangerous. They tell me stories about your wars, your weapons, your soldiers. But those days are gone. You are alone. The last of a dead species. What can one human do against a fleet? Call off your ships, Jake said. Take your people and leave. This is your only warning. Draven laughed again. I am going to enjoy breaking you, human. Prepare boarding parties. I want the creature alive. The screen went dark. Immediately, the Velkari bridge exploded into activity. Officers were calling out reports, tracking the enemy ships as they moved into position. They are launching shuttles, Kavros reported. 30 minutes until they reach us. Can we run? Thyrus asked. No. They have blocked every exit vector. We are trapped. Jake turned to face the commander. I need weapons. Whatever you have. Guns, knives, explosives. Anything that can hurt someone. Thyrus shook her head. We are a research vessel. We have a few security weapons, but nothing that could fight off a boarding party. Show me, Jake said. They took him to the weapons locker. It was small, filled with basic stun guns and shock sticks. Tools for breaking up fights, not fighting wars. Jake looked over everything carefully, his mind working through possibilities. What about the engineering bay? He asked. Do you have welding equipment, chemicals, pressurized tanks? Engineer Tolik, a young Velkari, who had been watching with wide eyes, nodded. We have all of those things. Why? Because war is not about having the best weapons. It is about being willing to use whatever you have. Jake grabbed a toolkit and headed for the door. I need everyone who is not fighting to go to the safest part of the ship. Put the children there. Lock the doors. No matter what happens, do not open them. What are you going to do? Rin asked. Jake stopped at the door. When he turned around, there was something terrible in his eyes. Something that had been sleeping for 800 years and was now fully awake. The Krethvar want to see what a human can do. I am going to show them. He walked out of the room, leaving the Velkari staring after him. Thyrus had spent her whole life believing that humans were just another species. Interesting, perhaps. Worth studying, certainly, but not special. Not dangerous. Looking at the empty doorway where Jake had been standing, she knew she had been wrong. The warnings on that cryopod had been put there for a reason, and she had ignored them. Now everyone was going to learn why humans had been feared across the galaxy. She just hoped that lesson would not cost her crew their lives. Jake worked fast. In 30 minutes, he turned the corridors of the Seeker of Knowledge into a death trap. He welded sharp metal pieces to the walls at head height. He filled fire extinguishers with chemicals that would burn through armor. He rigged pressure tanks to explode when doors opened. He created choke points where the enemy would have to come through in single file. The Velkari watched him work with a mixture of fear and amazement. This was not how they fought. They used technology, shields, computer targeting systems. Jake used pipes and wires and anything else he could find. This is barbaric, Kavros said, watching Jake attach a blade to a spring-loaded trap. War is barbaric, Jake replied without stopping his work. The side that remembers, that usually wins. Engineer Tolik helped where he could, handing Jake tools and following his instructions. The young Velkari was scared, but he did not run. Jake respected that. Why are you doing this? Tolik asked quietly. You do not know us. We woke you up without permission. Why fight for strangers? Jake paused his work for just a moment. Because there are children on this ship. Because your people cannot protect themselves. And because I am a soldier. This is what I was made for. The first Krethvar shuttle connected to the airlock 28 minutes later. Jake stood in the corridor just past the entrance. Alone. The Valkyrie crew had moved to the inner sections of the ship, guarding the room where the children were hidden. Only Kavros had wanted to stay, but Jake had ordered him away. "You will die if you stay here," Kavros had argued. "Maybe," Jake had replied. "But I will take a lot of them with me. Go. Protect the others." Now he waited. The airlock hissed and groaned as the Krethvar forced it open. Jake could hear them on the other side, growling orders in their harsh language. He counted the footsteps. 6, in the first group, heavy armor, based on the sound, probably carrying shock weapons to take him alive. The door burst open, and the first Krethvar charged through. He made it 3 steps before Jake's trap caught him. A metal bar swung down from the ceiling, hitting him in the face with enough force to crack his helmet. As he stumbled, Jake came out of the shadows, a welding torch in one hand and a metal pipe in the other. The fight was fast and brutal. Jake did not fight like a Valkyrie or a Krethvar. He did not give warnings or offer chances to surrender. He moved like water, flowing from one enemy to the next, striking weak points, using their own weight and momentum against them. 3 Krethvar went down in the first 10 seconds. The other 3 tried to form a defensive line, but Jake was already behind them. The pipe cracked against a knee, the torch burned through a shoulder joint, an elbow strike crushed a throat. 6 enemies, 12 seconds. None of them ever touched him. Jake grabbed a real weapon from one of the fallen soldiers and moved deeper into the corridor. More were coming. He could hear the second shuttle connecting to another airlock on the far side of the ship. Good, let them come. On the bridge, Thyris watched the security feeds with her mouth open. She had studied humans in history books. She had read about their wars and their weapons, but reading about something and seeing it were very different things. Jake moved through her ship like a ghost. Every trap he had set worked perfectly. Every ambush caught the Krethvar by surprise. The slavers had expected to find frightened scientists and easy prey. Instead, they found death waiting around every corner. "How is this possible?" Rin whispered. "He was frozen for 800 years. He woke up less than 2 hours ago. He should barely be able to walk." "Human biology," Dr. Mira said, studying her scanner readings from earlier. "Their bodies store energy differently than ours. They can push through pain and exhaustion that would kill other species. Their ancestors were pursuit predators. They evolved to keep going when everything else stopped. The Krethvar sent more troops. Jake killed them too. When they sent soldiers in heavy armor, he used their weight against them, tripping them and striking at joints and gaps. When they sent fast scouts, he trapped them in dead-end corridors and cut them down one by one. After an hour, the corridors of the Seeker of Knowledge were littered with fallen Krethvar. And Jake was still moving, still fighting, still hunting. Finally, he reached the last shuttle. The pilot had stayed behind, waiting for the boarding party that would never return. Jake opened the door and stepped inside. The pilot looked up, saw what was standing in the doorway, and reached for his weapon. He was not fast enough. 10 minutes later, the shuttle disconnected from the Valkyrie ship. But instead of flying away, it turned toward the Krethvar flagship. Jake sat in the pilot seat, covered in blood that was not his own, and opened a channel. "Warlord Draven," he said calmly, "your boarding parties are dead. Every single one of them. I am coming for you now." On the bridge of his flagship, Draven stared at the screen. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human was flying toward him. Alone. In a stolen shuttle. "Shoot it down," Draven ordered. His weapons officers tried. They really did, but Jake flew the shuttle like he had been born in space, dodging fire that should have been impossible to avoid, using the debris from destroyed Krethvar troops as cover. The shuttle slammed into the flagship's landing bay, crashing through the force field and skidding across the floor. Before the Krethvar could react, Jake was out and moving, a weapon in each hand. The battle through the flagship was even worse than the one on the Valkyrie ship. Draven had hundreds of warriors, but they were slavers, not soldiers. They were used to fighting frightened prisoners and unarmed merchants. They did not know how to fight something like Jake. He cut through them like a blade through cloth. Level after level, corridor after corridor. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He was a machine built for one purpose, and that purpose was destruction. Finally, he reached the bridge. The doors were locked and barricaded. Jake did not bother trying to hack them. He found a weak point in the wall, set an explosive charge from a fallen soldier's belt, and blew his way through. Draven was waiting for him, a massive sword in his hands. The warlord was old and scarred, and had killed more enemies than he could count. He was not afraid. "Come then, human," Draven growled. "Let us see if the legends are true." Jake raised his weapons. His eyes were empty of everything except cold purpose. "They are," he said, and then he attacked. The fight between Jake and Draven lasted less than a minute. Draven was strong. His sword had killed hundreds of enemies over his long life. He was fast for his size, and his 4 eyes let him watch every direction at once. Any normal opponent would have been cut in half within seconds, but Jake was not normal. He moved under Draven's first swing, letting the massive blade pass over his head by inches. His hand shot out and grabbed Draven's wrist, twisting it in a way that made the warlord scream. The sword fell to the ground with a heavy clang. Draven tried to fight back. He threw punches that could have broken stone. He kicked and bit and scratched with everything he had. None of it mattered. Jake was everywhere and nowhere, striking nerve points, breaking joints, taking the warlord apart piece by piece. In the end, Draven was on his knees, one arm hanging useless at his side, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. Jake stood over him, not even breathing hard. "You wanted to own a human," Jake said. "How does it feel?" Draven spat blood on the floor. "Kill me then. Get it over with." Jake looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned away and walked to the communication console. His fingers moved over the controls, and suddenly his voice was broadcasting on all frequencies, reaching every ship in the fleet and beyond. "This is Sergeant Jake Brennan of the United Earth Defense Force. The warlord Draven 6 is defeated. His boarding parties are destroyed. Any ship that does not leave this sector in the next 5 minutes will join them." The response was instant. Through the viewport, Jake watched as the Krithvar fleet broke formation. Ships were turning, activating their hyperspace drives, running away as fast as their engines could carry them. They had come to capture one human. They had not expected to lose a fleet. Jake turned back to Draven. The warlord was still on his knees, but now there was something new in his eyes. Fear. "You will live," Jake said. "You will go back to your people and tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans still exist. Tell them what we do to slavers who threaten children, and tell them that if they ever come near this ship again, I will finish what I started today." He left Draven bleeding on the bridge and walked back to the landing bay. The shuttle he had stolen was damaged beyond repair, but the flagship had others. He took the smallest one and flew back to the Seeker of Knowledge. The Velkari were waiting for him when he arrived. Thyrus stood at the front of the group, with Rin and Kavros on either side of her. Behind them, the rest of the crew watched with wide eyes. Jake walked down the shuttle ramp and stopped in front of them. He was covered in cuts and bruises. His clothes were torn and stained with blood. But he was standing, and his enemies were not. "It is done," he said simply. Thyrus did not know what to say. She had spent her whole life studying the universe, trying to understand how things worked, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. One human, alone, had destroyed an entire slaver fleet. It should have been impossible. "Why?" she finally asked. "You owe us nothing. We woke you without permission. We ignored every warning. Why would you risk your life for us?" Why? Jake was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 800 years ago, I went to sleep thinking humanity was finished. I thought we had failed. That everything we built, everything we believed in, would disappear with us. He looked around at the Velkari crew, at their scared faces and hopeful eyes. But then I woke up, and I found people who needed help. Children who needed protection. And I realized that maybe humanity did not fail after all. Maybe the thing that made us special was not our technology or our weapons. Maybe it was something simpler. What? Rin asked. The need to protect people who cannot protect themselves. The refusal to walk away when someone is in danger. Jake smiled slightly. It was the first time any of them had seen him smile. That is what made us human. And as long as I have breath in my body, that part of humanity is still alive. Dr. Mira stepped forward. Let me look at your wounds. You must be exhausted. Later, Jake said. First, I need to tell you something. Something important. He looked at Thyrus. Project Last Light did not just send soldiers into the void. We sent everyone. Scientists who could cure diseases. Engineers who could build new worlds. Teachers who could share our knowledge. Hundreds of pods, scattered across the galaxy. Understanding dawned on Thyrus's face. The other pods, they are still out there. Yes, and if the Krethvar heard my pod's signal, others might have heard the signals from different pods, people like Draven, hunting for humans to capture and sell. Jake's expression grew serious. I need to find them. I need to wake them safely, before someone else does. That could take years, Kavros said. The galaxy is vast. The pods could be anywhere. None. Kavros. None. I know. Jake looked at Thyrus. I cannot do it alone. I need a ship. I need a crew. I need people who know this galaxy better than I do. He paused. I am asking for your help. Thyrus thought about everything that had happened. She thought about the warnings she had ignored, the danger she had brought to her crew, and the man who had saved them all despite owing them nothing. Our mission was to explore and discover, she said slowly. I cannot think of a greater discovery than finding the lost children of humanity. Rin nodded eagerly. The historical implications alone would be worth 10 lifetimes of study, and I would like to see more of what humans can do, Kavros added with a slight smile, preferably from a safe distance. One by one, the crew voiced their agreement. They had set out to find knowledge. They had found something much more important. They had found purpose. Jake looked at them, these strange aliens who had accidentally saved him from an eternity of frozen sleep. He thought about all the humans out there in the darkness, waiting to be found. Doctors who could heal, teachers who could inspire, builders who could create. The seeds of humanity, scattered across the stars. Then let us get started, he said. We have a lot of pods to find. The seeker of knowledge turned away from the battlefield and set a course for the unknown. Behind them, the wreckage of the Krethvar fleet drifted in the void, a warning to anyone who might threaten them. Ahead lay the galaxy, vast and full of mysteries. Somewhere out there, more humans were sleeping, waiting to be woken, and with each pod they found, the light that humanity had left behind would grow a little brighter. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as the ship jumped to hyperspace. For the first time since waking up, he felt something other than loss and anger. He felt hope. The last humans were not alone anymore, and together, they would face whatever came next. Far across the galaxy, in a forgotten corner of space, a cryopod floated in the wreckage of an ancient ship. Its warning lights had been dark for centuries, but now, responding to a signal that had crossed the void, they began to blink. Someone was waking up.